Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Old Head on the Porch. I say good morning because normally I record these videos in the evening, and as you can see, the sun is rising right now. It is the morning here where I live, which makes for some interesting lighting. But yes, Old Head on the Porch. For those of you who don't know, normally this is the kind of video where I sit down and chat with you guys about what's going on in the world of rock and metal. But as we all know, because of COVID and all this other shit, there's not a lot going on really to talk about. One thing though I do have to say, rest in peace to Mr. Eddie Van Halen. I'm recording this the day after it was announced that he had died of throat cancer, and the impact of that guy cannot be overstated. He was amazing, and Van Halen was pretty much the beginning of me getting into rock and roll back when the 1984 album came out when I was a kid, and so I've been a fan ever since, and so he will be sorely missed. 2020's been quite a year, huh? So, yeah, rest in peace, EVH. And so, because there's not a whole lot going on, instead of trying to talk about what's going on in rock and metal, I decided once again to turn to you guys and ask for questions, any questions you guys might have. And I got a whole bunch, so that's awesome. And I narrowed it down to 10, kind of 10, because a few of you I let you ask multiple things, so don't forget my kindness later on down the line when I'm a little dude and you guys blow up. So I'm going to answer some questions, and because it's the morning and not the evening as usual, I am having coffee instead of beer, and that's my wife. Good Girl Fabric is her fabric company. In case anyone's interested, but this is my mug. I know it's not metal, but it's more awesome than metal in my opinion. Nectar of the gods. So I'm just gonna answer some questions. We're just gonna have a chill morning. You hear the birds? I don't know if you can hear that. It's such a nice morning. I'm gonna try to not move too much so it stays focused on me. Anyway, so yes, some questions. Let's just dive right into the questions, and thank you all for sending me your questions. Over on Facebook, immediately I start trying to talk and I can't do it. I'm worse in the morning than I am at night, so get ready for that. On Facebook, I got a question from dyingscene.com. They ask, can you give an update on the guy who stole your old white rocking chair? Did he ever get caught? Is he in jail yet? That totally reminds me of that scene in The Big Lebowski where the cop's like, Leeds? Oh yeah, let me just check with the boys down at the crime lab. So I'm pretty sure that after we did the report to the cops about my white rocking chair being stolen, which if you watch the last video, there's an actual video of the guy coming up in the middle of the night and just walking away with my rocking chair. But I got another one. And yeah, we reported it to the cops, but I'm pretty sure they file that away under T for trash. Because, that's the only thing that's happened. Yeah. I don't know if they'll ever do anything, and honestly, how will they even know who the fuck it was? So I'll let you guys know if for some reason anything else happens or if anything turns up with that guy, but no, as far as I know, the guy's probably just either sold my rocking chair or he's just relaxing himself on his front porch somewhere. So thanks for your question. Also on Facebook, this is one of the ones that I allowed to have multiple questions. So I'm going to run through these a little bit quicker than I would a one question thing. So this one's from Thrash Mania. What's up, guys, over on Facebook? Question number one from them was, would you choose Testament or Exodus as the fifth band in the big five of thrash metal? That's easy. I would choose Testament. If you're going by the rules of what is the Big Five, Big Four, but if they were the Big Five, all those bands are bands that all started in the early days of thrash, all have had incredible longevity and a large amount of album sales, but on top of that, there's like a global wide reach where they are known and very loved all over the world. And I think that between Testament and Exodus, I think Testament gets a little bit of a leg up on Exodus. Even though Exodus was around before Testament, I do think Testament as a band is bigger, and so that just seems to fit. And I also like Testament more than I like Exodus. I don't know if that makes me very uncool, but as we've talked about a lot, I'm not really that cool. That was a very long answer. I said I was going to make these short. Number 2, are you a fan of The Simpsons? No. I'm going to keep that short. Number 3, what inspired you to do old Headbangers Ball episodes? Really the same thing that inspired me to start doing podcasts and videos. I just really like talking about music, and I don't have a lot of friends or people that even give a shit to listen to me talk about things like this. And I always liked watching old videos, and I was really into Headbangers Ball back in the day. So I'm like, well, what if I just sat around and watched music videos and talked about them just like I would normally do, only with you folks over on YouTube? So that's where the idea for that came from. It's just something that I wanted to do for fun, because it's a blast. Number 4, and final question from Thrash Mania. Your experience in being in bands as well as the scene in your former hometown of Austin was mostly pop punk. What was your initial reaction to the 90s punk revival scene when it was bands like Green Day, The Offspring, Rancid, Bad Religion, NoFX, No Use for a Name, Good Riddance, etc.? First off, whoever wrote these questions from Thrash Mania clearly is a fan of mine, because they're referencing things from like an old podcast episode where I talked about my days in Austin being a musician. And when I started making music, I was making music in the early 90s, but when I started playing in bands, all of the people that I knew had all moved away from metal and all were just doing punk music, and I didn't really like it. But the music that I did connect with and wanted to make was bands like NoFX, I guess Bad Religion you could throw in there, No Use for a Name. Basically these sort of California punk bands that were almost taking a step from the crossover scene, because they were a little more technical and faster and proficient with what they were doing, and they weren't just sticking to the basic, Sex Pistols or Ramones template. Like they were doing different things, and that music excited me at the time. So I liked those bands. Unfortunately, there really weren't a lot of those kind of bands in Austin. I was in a band that tried to do things like that, but we weren't really that good. But most of the time I ended up playing music with people that were more into the post-punk or post-hardcore kind of scene, and that also wasn't very fulfilling for me. But I enjoyed some of it. But yeah, when it comes to those punk bands, I mean, I like all of those bands, but the big ones for me, like NoFX was a big one for me, Lagwagon as well. So I liked those bands, but really, if you talk to me back when all my friends were starting to get into those bands, my attitude was, why aren't we listening to metal? This is stupid. So yeah. So thanks, Thrash Mania, for all the questions. I'm having another sip. Next up on Facebook, another multiple questioner, but I'm going to give him all the time he needs because he's a big supporter of mine, Thrash Metal Ambassador. How's it going? He has a few questions. Number 1 is, what are your thoughts on live streamings? For what they represent in the COVID world, I think they're cool. My problem with them is they're never available on a platform that's not glitchy. Because I like to watch shit. I have, a big-ass TV in my bedroom, and I have a big couch in there that I sit on, and I like to watch things on the big TV. So if I'm having to stream something from the internet on that and it's all glitchy and shit, at this point, like, I'm not going to pay money to watch glitchy live stream shit. If it gets posted later on YouTube, which is way easier to watch, then I'll do that. So yeah, so really, like, I would rather it be recorded and then you're able to buy it and watch it. That way you don't have to deal with the streaming bullshit. Because I would easily do that. I just don't like the quality and having to deal with the glitchiness. Number 2, do you think thrash metal is stronger again? No. I think when it comes to mainstream rock music, nobody knows that thrash metal is even a thing. I guess mainstream rock music is barely even a thing. But thrash metal, aside from a few shining stars, thrash metal is real cookie cutter. Nobody trying to make themselves unique. It's all very done by a template, and I can't tell the difference between, 10 to 15 different bands. You could just make me a compilation and I would probably think it was all the same handful of bands. So no, I don't think it's strong at all. I think that if it's going to get strong again, I think people have to start taking chances, and the thrash metal fans out there need to stop being dipshits about everything and start embracing different shit. Because I think that's the big problem, is that metal fans, for the most part, seem to be very close-minded these days. I don't know what happened with all the open-mindedness from all of us from back in the day, but I still got it, and I'm still looking for that different kind of shit. Anyway, next question. If you chose a non-metal genre for the rest of your life to listen to, which one could it be and why? If you guys watched my recent Vinyl Thoughts video, that genre would be hip-hop. And it, of course, would be old school because I'm an old head. But yeah, if I couldn't listen to metal, it probably would be hip-hop because I enjoy that almost as much. And then finally, not a question, what kind of a question? He says, my father would be grateful if you send him greetings. His name is Mauricio Rojas. Thank you. Mauricio, he said that you watch with him, and from what I can gather from him, you have birthed, well, you didn't birth him, his mom did, but your seed was responsible for birthing a great individual and an asset to the metal community. So cheers to you, sir. If you're having coffee or whatever you're having, have one of those. So yes, what's up, Mauricio Rojas? So thank you, Thrash Metal Ambassador, and let's move on to the next question. Let's move over to the YouTubes. On YouTube, Brian Duraz, I think that's how you pronounce it, says, hey man, was wondering what your thoughts are about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I also wonder why it seems Halford wants to get there so bad. Just my thoughts. I don't know. I like it when bands and artists that I like get recognized for however they get recognized. Now, you could say that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is kind of odd because it's not just rock and roll. And then sometimes some people get in and others don't, and I don't really understand why, because even looking at it objectively, I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to me. Wanting to get in, I don't really know how it would feel to be like a legendary metal or rock performer and get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, I like watching award shows. I like whenever I can catch little bits of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame show that they do, I'll watch that. Even artists that I don't even really care for, I'll probably watch it. I just like music being celebrated, so I don't really care how it's done. So I'm perfectly fine with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But like my good man Alex Lifeson said in his acceptance speech, blah 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 blah. So yeah. Next up from YouTube, a question from Lewis. This is kind of related to what Thrash Metal Ambassador asked, so I'll probably piggyback off that answer. Do you think thrash metal will ever return to its days of glory? Like the best metal to listen to nowadays is X thrash band or something along those lines? Or do you think the closest thing of that we'll ever have is X metal band has some thrash elements and is pretty good? So Lewis, I will refer to the answer that I gave before. Thrash metal, to me, was the best when there were elements of other things involved in the thrash metal. That's why we talk about still Metallica and Megadeth and Slayer and Testament, especially the bands in the big four minus Slayer. But those bands all didn't do just thrash, even from the beginning. Like album number 2, Metallica did Fade to Black, you know, and Anthrax was, you know, did things involving hip hop. And that's what made those bands so fucking good. So in my opinion, like I said before, the only way thrash metal is going to thrive again, in my opinion, or at least catch my attention, is if they stop trying to be all samey all the fucking time. That's all I want. Just take some chances, surprise me. So if that happens, then thrash metal will come back, at least in a big underground way. Right now, I think thrash metal is very niche, as they say, and some people love it, some people don't care for it, but it has an audience. Unfortunately, I'm not really one of them when it comes to newer thrash. There's a few bands out there, but that's basically it. So thanks, Lewis. Next up, a related question from Sean Weschler. How would you rank the big four? This is very easy, and it's going to piss off some of you people out there, because I get a whole lot of guy waving at me down the street. I don't even know him. That's the kind of neighborhood I live in. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the big four of thrash. How would I rank them? So Metallica is number 1 because they're my favorite band, and I think that they are the most important out of those 4 bands with what they've done. And what they've accomplished and the reach that they have over metal and rock in general. Second up for me is Anthrax, because Anthrax is also one of my favorite bands, and they were, out of those 4, next to Metallica, the most interesting. Their story, their discography, I like their style. I love listening to their music. Number 3 would be Megadeth. Because Megadeth, like Metallica, were not afraid to stretch themselves out and try different things. And obviously, Dave Mustaine's an amazing guitar player, and he always surrounds himself by amazing musicians. And once again, there's the longevity and the reach and the importance of what he's done. Last but not least is Slayer. Mostly because Slayer, to me, didn't try hard enough to incorporate different elements in what they did. I really like all of their albums. We did a Cranked and Ranked episode on Slayer. You hear me talk all about Slayer. I just think overall they're the least interesting to listen to, which I can refer you to all the answers that I've given so far about thrash metal, where I'm talking about how I like things to surprise me and to be different and to take chances. And Slayer, for the most part, they matured their sound in certain ways, but they didn't really take risks at any point in their career. So they're the least interesting of the 4. So there you go. That's my answer to that. Next up on YouTube, Ricardo Betancourt. Are you related to Nuno Betancourt by any chance? What would the concert of your dreams be? Like, if you could pick 5 bands to play in a night to remember, what bands would play and in which order? You have total freedom as to what bands to choose, either active or not. I've actually thought about this before, and staying on the subject of thrash metal, because I love it so much, my dream concert would be, I would have to time travel back to 1990, so come with me, folks, to 1990. The concert, picking 5 bands in 1990. These are the bands in 1990 as they would have sounded. Metallica would be the headliners. Then you would have Megadeth would be playing, because they were fucking amazing. You would have Anthrax, 3 of the big 4, but in 1990 those bands were kicking so much fucking ass. And then we'll pick 2 smaller ones below them. Number 4 would be Sacred Reich, because like that was around the time of American Way. Holy shit, man. And then of course my loves from the UK, Acid Rain, because that's around the time of Obnoxious. And so that would be my 5-band bill for 1990. That would fucking rule. So thanks, Ricardo. All right, so just a couple more, and then we'll wrap it up. This seems like it's taken forever. I'm sorry, guys. Over on Twitter and Facebook, I got 2 different questions from 2 different people for book recommendations. Over on Twitter, it was Dan Squires, and then on Facebook, it was Ayan Inchilglu. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. But they both asked questions about books and what I'm reading. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to books. Like, I don't read fiction, obviously, but since we're talking about metal, obviously we're talking about metal or rock related books. I'm also not a very big fan of bios, because biographies or autobiographies or whoever writes them, they spend too much time on details that I'm not interested in, because as a fan of the music, I just want to get down to the nitty gritty. So I almost want there to be just maybe 2 or 3 pages on childhood and growing up and when you learned how to play your guitar, and then jump right into, we walked into the studio to record our first album or whatever, you know? Like, I want the nerdiness. I just want the details. Some of my favorite books that I've read recently are from an author named Martin Popoff, which some of you may know because he does stuff on Banger TV. But he did a couple of books that were called Album by Album. He did one for Rush and one for Iron Maiden. I think he did one for AC/DC also, but I haven't read that one. But it's literally just breaking down each album with people who are fans and talking about the pros and cons of those albums. And that's the kind of shit I love to read. Like, I just want to get down to the nerdiness. Just talk about the songs themselves, the impact of the music at the time, what was going on in music, what was going on with the band, what went into recording it technically. So in my dream world, books like that would come out for like all of my favorite bands, where they just break down the albums and the production of the albums and everything. I know there are some books like that, but for the most part, there's not. It's mostly just people want to hear rock and roll stories about what was it like when you hung out with Dimebag or whatever. You know, it's like, I mean, that's great and all, but that's not. I'm not interested in that. I want to know the details of the albums that I love so much. But yeah, those album by album books by Martin Popoff. He also does some. I read one that was called Iron Maiden Day by Day, which literally just goes through the timeline of what happened with Iron Maiden, and it's just facts going through the years. That's pretty interesting to me. I'm a total nerd, I know. All right, let's stay on YouTube's here. Hello, everyone. I'm having another drink. Yeah. Okay. 8-Ball Bowler asks, Roth, Hagar, or Sharon? A very timely question since we just lost Eddie Van Halen. So, for those of you who don't know, he's asking about Van Halen singers. David Lee Roth, Sammy Hagar, Gary Sharon. Gary Sharon was only the singer for one album. But out of all of those 3 vocalists, because you didn't say anything about Van Halen, Gary Sharon is my favorite vocalist out of those 3. I like his voice. I like listening to that guy sing. I like Extreme. They were a great band. And yeah, so I would pick Gary Sharon. When it comes to Van Halen, I'm a David Lee Roth guy, because he had a very unique voice, has a very unique voice, and as a frontman, he just seemed like there are certain people, like David Lee Roth, Steven Tyler, you go even further back, Mick Jagger. There are those frontmen that seem to just define what it meant to be the frontman in a band. And so I love that about David Lee Roth, and I like the David Lee Roth era albums more than the Sammy Hagar era. So if we're talking Van Halen, I'm choosing David Lee Roth. But if we're talking singers, I'm picking Gary Sharon. So, last question of the episode is from Bass with Barrett Incorporated. What do you think of the current metal trends, and metalcore and nu metal being most popular these days? So I didn't know that nu metal was popular now. I'm also not really immersed in the current metal scene, because I listen to things here and there, but so much of it I just hear it and I go, more of this sounds just like I tell every single Friday I will go to Apple Music and I will go to the new releases of metal, and I'll listen to a little bit of every album, and if I don't know the band, and the number of times that I'll go, this literally just sounded like the other album that I just pressed play on, whether it's another black metal group or another metalcore band or another this new hardcore thing that's happening with all of these bands that sound exactly the same. It's just it's getting aggravating being a metal fan, so much so that I'm reverting even more to my old head status and just being like, I'm just gonna hang out over here with this old shit because nothing is doing it for me. I'm not happy with metal now. I want there to be, the theme of this episode is experimenting and taking chances. That's what I want bands to do. And even the bands that are supposed to be these progressive bands, they just sound like other progressive bands, and they're not doing anything exciting or new. And I know that it's really hard to do something unique, but there has to be like a level of intensity and excitement and aggression, and it has to sound like the guys are having fun making the music. So much of this music that's made, it just sounds so laborious, like it's created on a laptop in a studio, and there's no passion in it. It's almost like it's just, if there was money involved in the metal scene, I would think that it was just churned out from some sort of record company. Just, we need more of these. Let's just churn them out. The one thing that it is doing for me is it is really, over the past few years, highlighted the fact that all of that great 80s metal that people like to talk shit about was not as manufactured as you think, because there's a lot of heart and soul in a lot of that music that is not around today. And so yeah, I'm not super thrilled with the metal scene today. So don't mean to end this episode on a downer, but this has been a long one. If you're still here, thank you for watching. So yeah, thank you very much for your questions. For those of you who I didn't get to your questions, I apologize. Some of the questions were related to things that I would want to do down the line for videos or podcast episodes, so you weren't ignored. So that's it. I hope whoa, look at that. That is bright. Holy shit. I'm a half vampire, so I can't be directly in the sun. Anyway, so yeah, thank you for joining me on the porch again. Thank you for listening. Thanks for your questions. Comment down below anything that you feel like you want to add. And thanks for continuing to watch my shit. I highly appreciate it. Is that even a thing? It doesn't matter. I appreciate it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all again very soon. Bye.